Hi, Mike Kennedy with you. Well, I finished the uh, edible insect course I was taking. And, it was kind of unusual because you know, this guy is a big advocate for eating insects. So a lot of it's geared towards trying to get you to accept the idea of eating insects as more normal. There's no doubt that our ancestors ate them. They're always talking about these paleo diets. Well, paleo diet probably included a good supply of insects. Uh, you know, Early man, hunter gatherer, some insects are easy to gather, other ones are not. But uh, if you've ever watched Survivor Man, I'm sure you will know what a witchetty grub is. It's this fairly significant sized grub that can live inside a tree, and you basically get him out and hold his head. You don't want to eat that, and you bite up his body, throw the head away, and you've eaten something. They say it tastes good, especially when you cook them. But so uh, Asian cultures still did and still consume a lot of insects. He talked about different problems with overharvesting and things uh, as insects have become more popular in some ways. It's put a big demand, or let's say livelihood income opportunities for people in these countries. I mean, if all of a sudden you can get, I'll just make this up since we know what a grasshopper is. If 15 grasshoppers can get you $2, you know, and they're plentiful, you're going to go out and gather them, get your money and exchange the money for other goods that you need. Uh, in some ways, eating insects has been associated with being poorer. Like people had to eat insects. They didn't want to, but they had to. So sometimes as people climb up the economic ladder and move into cities, have better income, they want to eat more meat. But they've also found that there's a huge demand for insects in these cities because that's something they ate, and they want to continue eating it to some degree. So it's created, they're the ones in the city. They've got better jobs. They've got some disposable income. Well, you have the people out in the country that might be a lot poorer, but then they're supplying them with insects, so they're getting a better income too. But some people are like, well, now that I have money, I'm going to eat food that the rich people eat, which really not rich, but just people with some money, uh, which is too bad. But they are seeing an increase in the demand for insects, but it's not as big as the demand for meat. You know, meat, fish, and animal flesh, mammals, fish, and so that's increasing. And of course, he goes through all the ecological reasons why we should eat insects, uh, how that he doesn't think it's sustainable that we keep eating the animals we do when, uh, you know, you have a cow and, has to eat so much grass, has to drink so much water. You have to take care of it in a lot of different ways. And when it's to the age that you're going to harvest it, well, you might be getting milk, but uh, if it's at the age that it's harvested, it's killed and cut up, and that's all what you've gotten from it. But if you take the total amount of food, total amount of water, and all those things, or ecological impact as far as the area they need, uh, beef needs a certain amount. You go to something like chicken, they need way, way less. But then you go down to insects, they need way, way, way less. And insects are fairly easy to prepare. Some of them you can just cook and eat the whole thing. Some of them, would be the way I like to try the cricket flour they have. But basically, they take crickets, they freeze dry them, I believe, and then they grind them into a powder, and then you can use that to replace some of the flour in different items. And really increase the protein content quite a bit. In other words, you had potato chips that actually had a decent amount of protein in them and things like that. But right now, insect, you know, for people in areas that don't have the culture of eating insects, insect type products are really expensive. And that would be us in the US. And, you know, then we go to the next logical step that he's advocating a lot is farming insects. In other words, just like in Asia, they have these huge operations that, you know, raise insects. And he mentioned, I don't know if this was, he said in Korea or where it was, but 60% of the industries that are raising insects are owned by women. So they were, you know, kind of talking about that idea that it's giving people opportunities to generate a decent income, especially for, you know, women that in some of these societies traditionally might not have that opportunity. One thing that bugged me is he did a part about bees, and he really dumped on the idea of people eating honey. Oh, that's just sugar. That's sugar. That's sugar. You can't do this. Can't do that. This is sugar. Sugar. I'm like, well, I thought that was a little stupid. Saying honey is sugar is just sugar is saying tea is just water. You know, there are other things in that. I mean, yeah, honey has a lot of sugar in it, maybe almost pure sugar, but it has a flavoring component. I don't know many people that I've ever met that say, oh, I don't like honey. You know, it's just a universally liked flavor. And, you know, and just like anything else, in moderation, it can be fine. You know, I've noticed when I cook bread, people have said this and I tried it and it appeared to be true, although, you know, I don't have a scientific laboratory set up, but there's some antibiotic property of honey. And even after you cook the honey, like use it in place of the sugar in bread, it seems that the bread will not mold as quickly, that it has some kind of a little bit of that antibiotic property left in it, and your bread might last a little longer. And that seemed to be true for what I've done. So, I mean, so that was kind of the bad part of it. I would, if I was him, I'd cut those 2 lessons out or redo them. Because, you know, when people say things like that, you know, when someone says that about honey, you're thinking, honey tastes good. Wonder what the bugs taste like. If he's dumb, you know, if he says this about honey and is so kind of off the mark, it's going to make people think that maybe some of the other things he said were off the mark too. But he also talks about, you know, at the end they're talking about more in the future and bugs in space. So the other idea would be that insects can be something that converts protein. In other words, you have something like corn that is not a complete protein. You have insects eat it, and the insects become complete protein. So the idea could be that you would actually go into outer space and you would have these insects with you that would could continue to turn your food into a more balanced situation rather than having to bring a whole bunch of food with you. But, you know, that has to be refined quite a bit. And some animals, quail can't drink water in outer space. The cosmonauts, the Russian cosmonauts brought some quails into outer space and they like died because they needed gravity to be able to drink. And other insects, like they brought some silkworms up there, they could make their cocoons just fine up there, and some other insects that were fine. But kind of a unique environment. But, you know, so anyway, he talked about it. I enjoyed the course. I thought at one time when I had chickens that I might try, if I was going to try something, I would try the mealworms, which aren't really worms. They're the larval stage of a certain beetle. And evidently they're very easy to create, you know, to farm, to raise, you know, especially if you're only raising enough for your, you know, for your own chickens. And they don't smell. Crickets, I guess, can smell quite a bit. So it sounded like a really good idea. And again, the idea being if someone was on a professional scale with their birds, what they would do is some of that feed that was going to the uh, chickens would be held back, fed to the insects, and then the insects would go to the chickens. And again, there you've created dramatically more complete protein. And we know from different things they've done with chicken, actually cutting them open and dissecting them, that given the chance, 50% of the contents of a chicken's stomach will be insects, not plant material. So there we go. I enjoyed it. Uh, I'll do some little more things, reading about them and things, but it was interesting. You got to be really kind of interested in it. I guess it was like 2.5 hours of lectures. They were most broken down into 6 or 5 minutes. So, and there were quizzes you could take if you wanted to, maybe get some kind of certificate at the end or whatever. I think you had to pay for that, but I enjoyed it. And if someone has a real interest in it, they would probably enjoy it too. But I think the average person, after listening to a few of them, they would say, "Okay, that's enough. Change the channel, please." Tell me what you think. Bye.